Hey guys, so I wanted to quickly go over some of the price action we saw overnight. I think it could be helpful just to sort of level set where we are and where I think we may end up because we're sort of at a critical zone. So we talked about yesterday on the dollar how we're coming into this monthly resistance area. You can sort of refine it a little bit more if you add in some other key zones, but whichever zone you select, it is looking like an area that could offer some sort of a pullback. So we're seeing that on the 4 hour, right? So like you've broken market structure for the first time in a little while, right through here with that close. And then you're basically just testing the area before the breakdown. So you're testing right up into here, and we're getting that reaction. What you want to see if you're bullish risk assets is for this to continue turning around and maybe fill in some of this inefficient price action lower and test into these lower zones, maybe in like the 111 to 112 areas. You don't want to see this put in a higher low and just start rocketing again if you're bullish risk assets. So what does that mean for S&P? We talked about yesterday how on the daily we were looking great, right? Like we swept the 2022 lows, rocketed higher. What you're seeing now is a little bit of a pullback. I don't think this is anything to get super duper concerned with just yet. So when you have a monster daily candle like that, you do expect some sort of adjustment, some testing before continuing higher. So like if you look at this candle up here, it completely engulfed the one before it, but then half of the day started red before you continued on. Same thing here. You're going to expect some bit of a pullback. What you want to see, though, is for this to start turning around pretty much right where it is right now, right? So here is your breaker candle, which we tagged. We tagged it perfectly on ES, actually. So that would be this candle. Tagged it perfectly. We're looking to reverse here. This is on the 4 hour. So what I would expect or what I would want to see is you start putting in a higher low right where we are right now. Swept these lows. We filled in some of this inefficient price action. You want to start seeing it push here, especially coming into the open. So at the very least, I would expect us to start testing this zone up here. But you really want to flip that and push higher. So from a daily perspective, we had some pretty inefficient moves all the way down, just no relief. So if we start putting in a higher low, if it starts turning around, I could see us pushing up to the 3,800 level, but you can't get too far ahead of yourself. Certainly want to see what happens when we open here in about 20 minutes. But this is exactly the zone that I would have been looking to add to longs. So if we can flip this as support, it's looking good. If we start breaking down below here, definitely cut longs, get out, reevaluate, because it likely is that we're going to go a lot lower. Same thing with NASDAQ. We had the lows didn't quite get swept in NASDAQ, so the 2022 lows are actually down here. So we didn't quite sweep it, but it's either a sign of relative strength or maybe we're all just going to dump back down, tag those lows before moving higher. So NASDAQ had a really good looking candle, extremely bullish, and right now it's doing the exact same thing as the S&P, which is pulling back into this zone, and this is where you want to see it put in a higher low and continue on. The very least, I would be expecting it to fill in some of this inefficiency, but first you got to reverse here. We can't start projecting too much higher until we see sort of how we open for the day. I want to just quickly see if we're diverging at all through here. So that's not great. So ideally what we would have started seeing through here is some bullish divergence, such that, tag the level, break some market structure bullishly, and then carry on. It doesn't look like NASDAQ's doing it. Looks like S&P not doing it either. 43, 48, yeah, barely doing it. Let's see about these. Okay, So yeah, barely putting in divergence on the S&P, not doing it on NASDAQ. So going to be watching these as we open today. So what does that mean for Bitcoin? Again, it's just following the S&P, it's following NASDAQ. If you're trading it on a daily candle, that looks reasonably well. It would have been better if it had closed towards the highs of the day. One thing that I didn't like is how mechanically this traded. So if you've ever looked at pivots, this tagged it perfectly and then dumped back down. So tagged the R1 perfectly, and now we're coming back. So maybe we come into here, tag this one before carrying on. But that's just a super mechanical level. And these have been working really well. I don't trade these, but it's something I do look at because the price responds to them very, very well. But what it's actually doing is, again, same thing we talked about on S&P and NASDAQ. It's just tagging these lower breaker zones, and this is exactly where you want to see price put in a higher low and carry on. So we've just had a lot of inefficiency on the way down, and we need to see that sort of cleared up. So one thing I've been doing lately is monitoring the CME charts. I don't trade these, but because we are following S&P and NASDAQ so closely, I think they're worth paying attention to. So again, CME chart, we actually swept the 2022 lows on Bitcoin. And we talked about we hadn't done it on just crypto exchanges. So these got swept, but what we've seen is wildly inefficient price action that usually gets filled back in. So for example, let's just pull up the 4 hour. You see, dump candle, rocket ship to fill it back in, dumped back down, fills in this inefficiency. This is inefficient. We clear back up through it to solve it. This is inefficient. We come back through it. Inefficient, changes it. It just goes on and on, but we haven't sort of cleaned up this area yet. So what I want to see is I want to see a higher low get put in this zone. If you find reasons on a lower time frame to get bullish again, it might not be a bad idea to add to longs. And then what you're looking for is to take out all of these highs through here and here, and then start filling in some of this inefficient price action. So it doesn't have to happen now, but this would be the spot I'm looking for price to reverse. But at the end of the day, we talked about it yesterday, it's just been complete and total chop. So we got above the range, now we're back inside it. What you want to see is this flip the range high before we can carry on. If we start pushing lower, then you're going to want to watch for this order block to get flipped into resistance before you start looking for shorts. Same thing on Ethereum. It's been pretty inefficient. We've got gap closures that have filled in. We do have a small one up here. Doesn't have to get filled in, but if we start coming up into that level, that'd be somewhere I would be looking for. The big resistance on the Ethereum CME chart is this, where is it? This level. This right at 4,000. So we stopped on a dime here after dumping, came back to it, tagged it. What we looked like we were going to launch, and then we gapped down below it, couldn't close above it, tested it again. If we can flip this 1405 level, that would look good for me for adding into more size on longs, because right now it's total headwind for Ethereum. But same thing with Bitcoin. This is just complete chop. We're just chopping in a range, draw it however you want. It's just not great if you're a trend trader. If you're a range trader, you're loving life. So again, I want to see Ethereum, same with Bitcoin, same with indexes. I want to see it turn around here. I think a lot of this is going to depend on how stocks open here in the next 20 minutes or so. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. But this is sort of what I'm looking for. Dollar looks like it's in a position to maybe pull back, provide some relief to equities. Equities, you want to see it put in a higher low exactly where it is. You want to see it flip this high and push on. So if we can start trading back above the 720 level, I'm looking for this zone next. And if we flip that, then obviously looking to fill in some of this gap here. So equities is about the most important thing you can watch if you're trading crypto right now, because they're just following each other. But hopefully that helps. Let's see how things open, and we will go from there.